Okay, hi, I'm back. Sorry about that. Had to go deal with something. But so I was importing my explosion. And so in order to do that and have it use this as frames of animation, I guess I should start from the beginning here. So when you are making a sprite. Now, so far we've had sprites that are pretty simple, like, a starfighter, and this isn't going to really move. It's just going to, do its thing. It's just one image. But if we have something like an explosion, or, a running character, really, if you were doing a game with a character, you would want to bring that in and have it animate. Now, the way you do that is through creating what is called a sprite sheet. Now, a sprite sheet is, as you can see, there are two ways to do it. You can either bring them in as separate images, but it's okay. We live in the future, so the thing about living in an age where things are more, our computers run faster, is that we don't have to be as efficient as we used to need to be. But that doesn't mean we can't be. So what we're going to do is still practice like good efficiency and try to put everything into a sprite sheet when we can. So if we were being really efficient, we'd put everything in the game in a sprite sheet, which actually there was one of those in the resources folder. I'm just choosing not to use it. So I'm going to bring this in as a, this is a sprite sheet. So you see all the frames of the explosion are here. Now we have to break them apart. And in order to do that, what I do in my workspace, I go to Edit Image, and that brings up this workspace. And so when you're in a different workspace, sometimes you will get, if you observe the top menu bar here, you'll see it changes based on what you're in. So when we're in the sprite editor, we have this thing that says image, and then we can go down to convert to frames. And so we're going to do that. All right, and that gives us this handy dandy window where we can break, so we can say that number of frames. So this is this is 16 frames. So I'm going to type in 16. And numbers per row. So, because right now, I don't know if you can see this on the screen, but basically this just made like 16 squares stacked on top, and it just goes off the page. But if I go 4, now I'm going to have 4 by 4, which is what this is. And then frame width is 32, but you can see these are 64. So we're going to go 64. Frame height, 64. And I don't believe there's any horizontal offset, so we're just going to ignore that. But when you make a sprite sheet, what that is it's an image where the frames of animation for an object are, laid out in the way that you're seeing right here. So horizontally, vertically. Usually what you do here, it's just a 4x4 image of all of your explosion frames. But let's say you were doing a character. A really good way to do that might be to put all of your frames of an animation into, like, of one animation, so like idle, into a row. Now, depending on how many frames, that might make an image bigger than you want, so take that into account, but you want to like put them into rows. So usually we say to do textures and images for games like this as power of 2 textures, and that's what this is. This is a 256 by 256. But if, that's why it's cut into 64 by 64 squares. But, the sprite sheet does not have to be power of 2. Your sprites, it helps if they're power of 2, and these are, it's 64 by 64. So that's what we've done. Again, image, convert to frames, and then you get this interface The other thing to remember with sprite sheets, if you're making sprite sheets, is to try to make every frame exist in the same size box. Because what that does is it lets you take, make a nice even cut like this. And Game Maker's import tools assumes that it is the same size if you're using a sprite sheet. If you wanted to have them different sizes for some reason, and there are reasons to do that. I'm working on a game right now that the character's attack sprite has an effect attached to it, and we're just that sprite's really big. What you'd do is that's when you'd use different files, actual different files, and that'll help you bring in the sizes. You just change where the centers are. So I'm going to click convert, and yes. All right, cool. So now we've got that, and now what we'll do is if I click this play button up here, cool. So we have our animation. All right, so now, and we want the center of all of these to be middle center, and they are. Okay, cool. All right, awesome. So that's converted, and cool. So there's SPR explosion. So I think that's it for bringing in sprites. So now what we're going to do is turn those sprites into objects. Because what you're going to notice is if we go into our room and I wanted to bring our game sprite into the room, oops, and put it on instances. The selected layer does not accept dragged resources. Please select an appropriate layer type: object, instance layer, sprite, asset, or background layer path. So basically, see, this instance layer does not take sprites. That would have to be, it would take an asset layer. And there's a reason. There's a reason for that. So you see here, there's lots of different types of layers. There's asset layers, path layers, tile layers, instance layers. So instance layers are like where gameplay objects live. That's what we want. To use mainly here. We're using a background layer, which is this, and we're using a instance layer. So you see instances and background. Tile layer, that's if you're creating like a tile map and you're using that as a background. That's like level design stuff. Path layer, I think, yeah, that would be for, I don't really use this that much, but paths for objects. Asset layer, that is where you just want like a layer for putting artwork. You might have sprites and you don't necessarily want the sprite to do anything. It might just be eye candy. That's basically where you have eye candy. But we're just, again, doing something simple here. So we're going to do a, background and instance layer. So we need to turn these into game objects. So I'm going to right click, create object, and that's when I get this. So what I have here is I'm going to create my first object, which is going to be obj player ship. And I'm going to, it says no sprite. If I do this, now you see I get this menu of sprites. And that's one thing that's really cool about using this, is that once you make your sprites, then your sprites are automatically put here, and it's really easy to work with this. So if I go and look at my OBJ player ship, don't need to do anything here. All right, so I have my player ship. Collision mask, same as Sprite, so it's basically going to be like right there. Now I need to put my events. Now what are my events going to be? So this is where we get into Cody fun time. So I'm going to add an event. So events, if you recall, are the things that make the sprite go. So I'm going to add a other, and I'm going to add a create. I'm going to add a create. See, they're both light bulbs. So I'm going to add the off light bulb, which is create, and the create is going to include. Let me scroll over. My mouse is being weird. There we go. Sometimes I gotta hit it. So anytime you start a script, it's going to give you these. And what we're going to do is I'm going to keep the description line because I'm going to do description set up variables. So when you have these three, okay, yeah. So it's two slashes, forward slashes to comment code out, and we are going to use comments to excuse me. We're going to use comments to comment our code up and make sure that it's understandable by other people and by myself later. So always comment your code, and the reason you always comment your code is so you can revisit it and not be lost, or other people can revisit it and not be lost. So what this script we're going to create is it's defining variables. Now, why would we want to do that? Why don't we just define variables as we go? It can be really nice to define your variables in one place inside an object so that you can, like, if you need to tweak some things, like if we wanted to kind of, figure out like what our, if we're playtesting, we're like, okay, well, I want it to fly faster or slower. If it were somewhere in here, it'd be really kind of a pain to figure out where exactly we want to. If it were somewhere like let's say I have 7 events in here. If I have to go into all my events and try to figure out where my variable is to change my fly speed, and that's what I'm gonna. Fly speed equals 10. And if I'm like searching all over for that variable, then it's kind of a pain. What? Only referenced once. Yeah, that's fine. I know. I'm gonna reference it later. If I know that create setup variables, and as you can see, description setup variables, by typing it in that line, it gets added there. By knowing that this is the event that has all my variables, then I know, hey, this is where I can go to get my variables. So I'm going to do description map movement keys to WASD. Now this is really more of a polish thing, but I just want to show you how to do it. So if you want to use, I can use either arrow keys or WASD. And what that's going to do is, let me have flexible control. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to go to keyboard _ map. Oh wait, no. Set. So you see, watch this go in. All right, so, one of the great things also about Game Maker is that it pops up, these helpers for you. So I'm actually going to click on this helper, so it's going to give me map. Now I'm going to type in ORD, and then that's going to give me, basically this is me identifying a key on the keyboard. So you go ORD and then W and then VK underscore up. So what does that mean? So what I'm defining here is I am saying that I want to map a keyboard key, and that map key is going to be the W key, ORD, and then in parentheses W, basically ORD on this, and then the name of the key tells you like get a key from the keyboard, comma, virtual keyboard, so VK up. So what I'm saying is the thing that would happen if I hit up should also happen when I hit W. Okay, and what I can do now, instead of having to type all that out, paste, paste, paste. Whoops, not there. Let me go to boop, enter, paste. And then I can go A, and that's going to go. So while I'm doing this, I should also mention that this kind of thing, so, oops, not capital, underscore down. So this kind of thing, mapping keys to inputs, is really important if you ever want to make something with like alternate controllers or things like that. Basically, alternate control games, alt control games, are basically games that trick a computer into thinking that input from other stuff, like an accelerometer or a temperature gauge or something like that, is just keyboard input. So that's like the secret of all of these. To space bar. That's the secret of all of these things, is that's actually what they're doing, is they're just remapping. So what we're doing, now we're going to go to keyboard underscore set underscore map. And then I'm going to do VK underscore space. ORD Z. Oops. Z. Okay. So same thing. I'm gonna, say space, and basically I'm saying space and Z are gonna do the same thing. So there we go. There's my stuff. All right. So now, by the way, I should probably save project. Now I'm going to add some more events, and those events are going to be add event. Oops, wrong window. Add event. I'm going to add a key down, and that's going to be left key down. And what that's going to do is in the description, I'm going to type in move left. And then that's going to be if x minus sprite underscore x offset is greater than 0. I promise to explain what I'm doing. Curly brace, x equals x minus fly speed, close curly brace. All right, now what did I just do? So what I've done is I've made it so that, key down, left. So now already we're seeing that if I go back to my create event, See, key down left is a command. So what happens in GameMaker is that you can create events, and these events are like commands that happen, they're different like things that happen in your game. So here's gesture, so if you're doing mobile, so this is like stuff you can do on a mobile device, like tap, double tap, drag, things like that. You can have collisions. You can have when keys are pressed. You can have when keys are down, which is what we have. So like any time the key is down, so it's like if I'm holding down the left key, then something is happening. What this create script does is it says that this line that we typed says, but also if like left key is doing something, A can do that too. So that's what's going on here. So we're defining this as what happens when you're holding down left, but because of this line of code, it's also going to that's in the create event, we're also going to think, oh, A can work for that too. So that's pretty cool. So if I look at this, now what's going on? If x minus sprite x offset. So what this means is if the size of this sprite minus the distance from like the center to the edge of the sprite is greater than 0, aka if it's not going to like hit the edge of, if it's not on the edge of the screen, then x equals x minus fly speed. So what this does is this is actually the line that gets it to move. What this line does, x minus sprite underscore x offset greater than 0, is this is going to make it so that we can't like hit left and then keep going off the screen. So you want something like that to guard and create like a wall for you. So that's what we're going to do. The other way you can do it is like, I don't know, could probably put collisions out, like just outside of the boundary, but that's kind of the dirty way to do it. This is like the nice clean way to do it. So we're going to do this. All right, so now, so what we're going to do is we're going to copy this code. Well, we're going to copy this code. Control C. Now we're going to add event for key down up, and we're going to call this move up. And we're going to, all right. So this is different because this is up. This isn't left or right. So we were doing left before. We're doing up now. So that's the y-axis. So now we want it to only go. So we have to change all the x's in this script to y. So y minus sprite underscore y offset is greater than 450 because what we want to do is make it so that